Excuse me, but have you seen my friend R2-D2? We arranged to meet on this planet, and I think he might have got lost again. He has no concentration, you know. Hello? Hello? I don't think you understand a word I say.
Hello, I'm Peter Serafinowicz. I'm an actor, and I'm also a big Star Wars fan. I was the voice of Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace, the best Star Wars film. I've been granted special access to the BBC archives to look at some of the early TV appearances British fans got to see when the first films came out. Most of these clips haven't been seen for over 30 years. So let's step back in time, a long time ago, to a galaxy far, far away. I mean, actually very near. Oh God, he is so gorgeous. Talking about R2-D2.
In the studios at Elstree, just north of London, we've been watching Chewbacca, Princess Leia, Han Solo and the others, making the film whose launch the cinema world is now awaiting at fever pitch. And we've been learning what differences there are when you shoot a major film with a British rather than a Hollywood technician. Han Solo.
He drinks more tea.
C-3PO?
Well, you get marvellous results here, and it's surprising that more isn't done here.
Luke Skywalker.
It's almost the same, except with British accents.
Action! The arrival of the Americans at Elstree has meant much more than simply jobs for people who make films. This is
Michael Rudd with his fingertips pointed in. Michael Rudd on the Millennium Falcon! Oh my God.
Sections of this craft. But for the sequel, they've built the complete thing. And the actual job of construction went to a firm of heavy engineers in South Wales, far more used to servicing the North Sea oil industry than the film business. It was a contract worth £70,000.
Standing all awkwardly with his crotch sort of slightly pointing out, sucking all the fun out of Star Wars. Okay, this is the very first report BBC News ever did about Star Wars. It's 1977, December 27th, weirdly, a Tuesday.
Well, we wanted to get in and see it on the only unreserved show, and it's booked through on the bookable shows right until March, and we couldn't afford to wait that long. And the prestige of being able to say you've seen Star Wars is something akin to royalty, really.
Whoever wrote it had a fantastic imagination.
I think it was good.
Just good?
No, fantastic. It was exciting, but I didn't like the bit when the man chopped off the person's arm.
Why not?
Because there was blood.
Oh, but don't we like blood?
No.
Oh, too bad.
Oh, no, of course I don't. Do you? Well, yes, I do, as a matter of fact. Next up, this is Mark Hamill's first ever appearance on British television, 2 weeks before Star Wars came out.
And winning yet another battle in space was the hero of Star Wars, Luke Skywalker, known in real life as Mark Hamill. And this is Mark's very first appearance on British children's television.
Aww.
So Mark, welcome to Blue Peter.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for coming along.
My pleasure. I'm surprised you call it a children's show, because when we were filming the movie, I watched Blue Peter all the time.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Can you tell us a little about what the story is about in Star Wars?
Well, the story, when you actually put it into words, is only so much nonsense to hang a great visual experience onto. It's the stuff that fairy tales are made of. We have a fairy princess. We have an innocent farm boy who yearns for adventure. Alec Guinness is a wise old wizard who teaches me a mystical force, somewhat like Merlin would teach a young King Arthur. Harrison Ford plays Han Solo, a cynical space pirate that we hire to transport us through the galaxy. Basically, I'm a farm boy. I inherit...
Farm boy makes good.
Yes.
A nice. I hope it's a good ending. I'd have to go and see it to make sure.
Oh God, he's so sweet, isn't he? And I love the way he explains it so eloquently for children as well. Like, I couldn't think of a better explanation than that. It's just great, God. Although it's quite tense because you're just wondering, is that Blue Peter ship going to fall down if one of those strings breaks?
But at least you didn't have to wear any of those very complicated costumes when you were playing your part of Luke Skywalker. Because some of the actors, in fact, who were playing the baddies, they really did have quite a time of it. Were playing the Imperial forces, they had to wear space-age armour and funny helmets. Talking of funny helmets, John.
Where is John?
Talking of funny helmets, John.
Gosh. John's never looked better, has he?
Oh. John, did you hear that? Mark said you never looked better. Come round here. Come round here. Climb over. John, you're not very frightening, I hate to tell you. Not convincing as a
Now,
bad
this, mind you, was worn by actors in the England's hottest summer. Was it? Remember the summer 70s?
It must have been murder.
Next up, from 1980, Ask Aspel. This was a kid show in which Michael Aspel played the best bits of that week's telly and got a guest in to answer questions. This week's guest was Mark Hamill. And bear in mind, this is 1980, so at this point, Mark Hamill was one of the biggest stars on the planet, and yet they managed to get him on Ask Aspel.
You did a lot of television work, didn't you, in the early days? Things like Coronation Street.
Well,
things like Coronation Street. Mark Hamill wasn't in Coronation Street. Things like Coronation Street. He started that sentence really cool. You did a lot of television work in the early days, didn't you? Things like Coronation Street.
Sort of the American version of Coronation Street. I did 51 episodes of an American soap opera, but really it was a matter of trying to get any experience I could.
There was a lot of talk, a lot of stuff written in the press about a terrible accident that you survived. Those reports were exaggerated, I believe.
Oh, yeah. In early '77, before the film came out, my car skidded and I broke my nose against the steering wheel. And it was sort of forgotten. They set the nose and the movie came out. Nobody noticed, you know, that there was anything wrong. And I never really thought about it. And over the period of years, it's built up into having my face reconstructed with plastic surgery.
But it wasn't really too bad, and you are really as you seem.
Right, I didn't know that. I always thought it was more serious than that.
Fiona Ferguson from Falkirk and Robert Davis from Exmouth, Robin Clark from Rossington, want to know which film you enjoyed more. Is it possible to like one more than the other?
That is difficult to say. I think it was more gratifying for me as an actor in this one, because I think I get to show a little bit more depth, and it's not so much golly anymore. It's more, hey.
There's a little bit of recording that happened just before the show went on air, and it's quite interesting.
Luke Starkiller.
That was the original name.
Was it?
Yeah.
No wonder it sounded familiar.
No, how do you know about that?
Right, Luke Starkiller. Yeah, that's what he called him, and then he changed it like the day of filming. He changed it to Skywalker because he thought Starkiller sounded too violent. That's Michael Aspel. That's Michael Aspel saying Luke Fagbender when he thinks nobody's recording.
Luke Fagbender.
No, Luke Fagbender. That's it. It's undeniable. I'm going to send that up to the boys in the lab, but I'm pretty sure that's Michael Aspel saying Luke Fagbender for comic effect. So this is where it all starts, Fagbendergate. And apparently, doing one kids' show that week wasn't enough. 2 days later, he was back onto Blue Peter with the rest of the gang.
Chewie is enormous. He certainly is. I'm pretty tall, but he absolutely towers over me. And in fact, there are only 3 people this height. That's 7 feet 2 inches, or 2 meters 36 centimeters in the whole of Britain. Is it cold up there?
And watching that hair-raising sequence with me are none other than Princess Leia herself, otherwise Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill, alias Luke Skywalker. Mark, welcome back to Blue Peter.
Thank you.
Carrie, welcome to the programme for the first time.
Thank you. If we may, we'd like to give you a very small present. These are 2 copies of the very first edition of our Blue Peter Book of Gorgeous Grub. And half the proceeds of the book are going to Cambodia. It's absolutely packed full of recipes, which are favourite recipes of our Blue Peter viewers, but there's one on page 57, which I think you two would find particularly interesting. It's called Star Wars Stew, and it was sent in to us by 8-year-old Elspeth Bruford of Edinburgh, and she says that she and her family called it this because it was invented when they wanted a hot meal waiting for them when they came back from seeing your film Star Wars.
And now's your chance to actually taste them, because we've got some here, Carrie and Mark. I'm assured it's piping hot. It certainly smells delicious.
It's the most wonderful mixture, I assure you. It's a mixture of sausages, baked beans, onions, tomatoes, sweet corn, chips, potatoes, and cheese. I don't think it's a week. Eat for 3 weeks after you've had one of these.
You could identify the time and place on Earth with pinpoint accuracy just from that recipe.
They don't usually feed us in space. And Mark, you get to eat. We're so busy escaping Darth Vader.
I only get Yoda stew. I've never had Star Wars stew before.
Well, I'll tell you what, I bet when Carrie sent this, I mean, not Carrie, I'm sorry, when Elspeth sent this recipe in, she never dreamt that Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker themselves would be eating it. I'm sure she's absolutely thrilled.
I'm no one.
I wonder if the cast of the new film are going to turn up on TV and get force-fed Star Wars stew. I doubt it somehow.
I was raised to do one thing, but I've got nothing to fight for.
Okay, what have we got here? Darth Vader, the scariest, most evil presence in the galaxy.
Good evening. Now, these are not members of the Musicians' Union. This is Darth Vader, the villain from the film Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, who is our guest tonight, or at least the man beneath the mask is Dave Prowse. Later on, he'll be telling us about the seven-stone weakling who became an international weightlifting champion. Seven-stone weakling. We do have, however, members of the real Musicians' Union on the other side of the lawn there, and because they're in dispute with the BBC, they will be trying to disrupt the programme. Fortunately, we're always in such a state of permanent chaos, I never know when we're being disrupted and when we're not.
And there was disruption. Once Dave Prowse had slipped out of the Vader costume and into a very frilly shirt, the Rebel Alliance from the Musicians' Union caused a disturbance in the force during this interview with, bizarrely, Jackie Collins.
How did you get this amazing part in Star Wars?
Well, I'd had a long history of playing monsters.
I see.
I was playing Frankensteins, and I started at Casino Royale, then I went to the Horror of Frankenstein, then I went to Vampire Circus, then I finished that with doing a film called Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. And I think George Lucas had seen these pictures and wanted somebody very big and physical for the part in Star Wars. And when he saw me, I went up to the 20th Century Fox offices and
Carry on as if he can't hear this music.
which I'd like you to consider. And I said, well, what are they? And he said, well, the first one's a character called Chewbacca. And I said, well, what's Chewbacca? And he said, well, it's like a hairy type gorilla that goes through the film on the side of the goodies. And I thought, well, I don't fancy that very much, George. And I said, what's the other one? And he said, well, the other one's a character called Darth Vader, who's the big villain of the film. And I said, well, no, don't say any more, George. I'll take the villain's part.
They'd just taser those musicians now, wouldn't they?
Exterminate! Exterminate!
This is an episode of The Goodies. Now, apparently the R2-D2 figure was just built by the BBC props department. They've not done a bad job, but I'm not sure this is the sort of thing that will be happening to any of the robots in the future films. And to mash up Star Wars and Doctor Who, well, it's the stuff of geek fantasies, but copyright lawyers' nightmare.
Hello!
And this, is this destroying the magic or enhancing it? C-3PO interacting with Noel Edmonds.
Ooh, a human. Well,
wrong.
Perhaps you can help. Well, excuse me, sir. I wonder if you can assist me.
Well,
I'm looking for my counterpart, R2-D2.
R2-D2? What does he look like?
He's a rather small, round robot with a lot of flashing lights, and he makes loud bleeping noises.
No, I haven't seen him, but you look familiar.
Well, it is quite possible. Actually, I have appeared in 2 rather famous films.
That's it. I thought I'd seen you. You're
C-3PO, human-cyborg relations. Yes, that's right.
Tell us what was the original concept.
Well, the idea really, because it's an American film, they're all going to be Americans in the film, because that's the way they all think, you know. And I the original idea was that he was going to be a rather sort of, a bit creepy and from New York, really. So he had this heavy American accent, and he was a little sleazy. Well, I couldn't possibly play anyone like that.
Of course not. What about the movements? Did the movements become dictated by, you know, sort of...
Well, partly, I got a bit of the costume here, which is...
Can you show us how that works? 'Cause it's...
Well, this is the arm. And it's interesting. Here we have what we call a greebly. Now, the definition of a greebly, it's a word we made up, actually, is something that looks as though it does something, but in fact doesn't. So when I'm wearing this and my hand is here, this looks like a piston that works the arm. In fact, it's the other way. It's the arm that works the piston. Do you get it?
Yes.
Is this too technical for you?
No, I'm following this.
I mean, I'm sure everyone at home is understanding that. I know you have a problem. And the same on the other side. You see there's another greebly there which opens up. And this is, in fact, made of aluminium. And they're all made by hand. The whole costume is actually worth about £150,000.
Really?
Yes. That's
God,
why they don't let me take it home too often.
That was one of the most informative things I've ever seen about Star Wars. That cost that was like £150,000 then. That's amazing.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Must be an old model, I suppose. Oh, if only I could find R2.
Well, that's our final clip. I hope you enjoyed them. I certainly did. I'll see you again in 30 years to talk about the next batch of sequels, unless they kill off Darth Maul. Goodbye.